for 6 minutes late at the opera, but in a room full of veterans, I should have known that we'd all be here on time. Just a second, please. There is somebody here tonight that will need that, but it's not me. Welcome, everyone. My name is Alex Minami. I have the pleasure of serving as Associate Director of Community Engagement here at Seattle Opera, and it is a very sincere pleasure to welcome you all here to celebrate somebody who is very special to all of us. And of course, I'll say much more about that in a second. But it's also my pleasure to welcome you all to this beautiful space. If you've never been here before, this concert hall is called Tagney Jones Hall. And as is our wont, I would like to acknowledge that where we are gathered here in Tagney Jones Hall is on the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish peoples, whose stewardship of this land and its waterways, both past and present, we acknowledge with respect and gratitude. Well, today we are here to celebrate somebody who is a beloved part of the Seattle Opera family, and not just the Seattle Opera family, but of many families, I know. Before I speak more about the role that Sarah's played here at Seattle Opera, I will read the bio I've given, which I'm sure is not required. I'm sure you all know Sarah's story very well. But to give a more formal introduction, we're here to celebrate the incredible journey of Sarah L. Blum, a decorated Vietnam War nurse, healer, and advocate, as she unveils her deeply personal memoir, Warrior Nurse, PTSD, and Healing. Sarah's life is a testament to resilience, compassion, and unwavering dedication, both on the battlefield and beyond. From serving as an operating room nurse at the height of the Vietnam War, to pioneering healing spaces for veterans and advocating for trauma resolution, Sarah has spent decades helping others find peace. She's also a martial artist, musician, and storyteller who continues to bring people together through her work. Her book is not just a memoir, it is a beacon of hope, shedding light on the unseen wounds of war and the power of healing. So we're very pleased that we all have this chance to come together today to honor Sarah's extraordinary work and the impact she continues to make. For my part at Seattle Opera in our community engagement programming, I've had the pleasure of working very closely with Sarah for over 5 years at this point. This story, our part of the story, goes back to 2019 when Seattle Opera produced a chamber opera called The Falling and the Rising, which was about the experience of a soldier who's been deployed abroad and her unit was hit by an IED and she's in an induced coma, and it's a story of inspiration and hope for those who experience such things while deployed, but also it shed an important light onto the experience of those in the military for people in the audience who may not have had that sort of insight. And it was originally conceived of by the U.S. Army Field Band and Soldiers Chorus, who in its first conception sang the grand finale, the choral finale at the end of the opera. And when we decided to do it here at Seattle Opera, we approached our wonderful friends at Path with Art to see if there were enough veterans in their programs who might be able to be part of a chorus that we wanted to put together to sing that grand finale. And sure enough, there were. And I think, it was already a tearjerker of an opera, but that's really when the Kleenex started to come out, was when we got to hear you all sing. And we had such a wonderful experience. And actually, Sarah, you got kind of a bit role at the end of that, if I recall. You were sort of the lone person left on stage as everybody exited. That was a very special moment. So Sarah joined the Veterans Choir, and it was only supposed to be a one-off thing for that chamber opera in 2019, but we all had so much fun doing it that both Path with Art and Seattle Opera decided we wanted to stay permanently, and so it is now a permanent part of our program, and indeed you can see that it still very much exists to this day. And we thought, what better way of kicking off today's event than by celebrating Sarah through music, through a performance of the Veterans Choir. So I'm very pleased to, well, I don't have to welcome them to the stage, to present the group that is currently on the stage, the Seattle Opera and Path with Art Veterans Choir, directed by Seattle Opera chorus master and head of music department, Michaela Calzaretta, and joined on the piano by Stephen Hudson. And they will be performing two pieces for you all. One that seems very timely, Blowing in the Wind, followed by Put a Little Love in Your Heart. yet another family that would like to pay tribute to her today. And this family is Red Badge Project, which is a creative writing program for veterans here. And Warren Etheridge is a longstanding instructor in the Red Badge Project, and he regrets that he was unable to join us in person today, but he was able to record a beautiful video message. And before we hear that, I just wanted to share a few quick words also about Warren Etheridge. And his skill as an instructor is one that I can personally attest to. Actually, Red Badge Project for a couple of quarters in a row, I want to say, for Skatra, they actually, we hosted their classes here in one of the classrooms just off the lobby. And Warren is just an incredibly inspiring figure. But to put it more formally, he's a passionate educator, storyteller, and producer dedicated to the power of narrative. Based in Seattle, he is the founder of the Warren Report, a film and arts screening organization that fosters creative dialogue. Warren has written 5 books, directed or written over 40 plays staged in New York City, and conducted more than 3,500 interviews with artists and thought leaders. As a filmmaker and curator, he has championed independent cinema through his work with the Walla Walla Movie Crush, the Seattle Jewish Film Festival, and the Geisa Powerhouse Theater. A committed educator, Warren teaches screenwriting and filmmaking at the University of Washington and Cornish College for the Arts. He is also a founding faculty member of the Film School and the Red Badge Project, where he helps combat veterans process trauma through storytelling. Warren's dedication to the arts, education, and meaningful storytelling continues to shape and inspire communities. And we will let Warren share a few words for Sarah for himself.
Do you remember the early days of 2020, January, February, pre-pandemic? It's almost easy to have a misty nostalgic quality about them now. But one of the reasons I remember those times so clearly is it is the first time that I had taught a Red Badge class with Path with Art. I've been teaching with Red Badge now for about 12 years. Back then, I guess it was around 7 or so. It was the first class in conjunction with Path with Art, and we were at the Seattle Opera House and meeting a new cohort of veteran students, amongst them Sarah Blum. And immediately it was clear that Sarah Blum was not like any other writing student. She's a bundle of energy, and there are lots of positive ways to spin that, all of which are true, but it really misses the point of who Sarah is, and that is someone who has worked furiously over the course of her lifetime, not only to make art, but to make good. And her writing is the manifestation of a lot of that good, as a way to cope with her own PTS, her own post-traumatic stress, with her own experiences. She's found an outlet through writing, and that writing has grown over the years. I feel very, 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 very lucky, very fortunate to have gotten to know her, not just through our interactions, but through her words and her work. And what has always struck me from the beginning is that she has the keen eye of a reporter, of a journalist, of somebody who remembers events in great detail and respects those details, as if providing a history for those who were not there, actually were not. And she can do all that in this wonderfully factual, almost clinical way, without ever losing any of the emotion. If you've ever met Sarah, and if you've ever had the good fortune to hear her talk about her experiences, or to talk about writing, is to be caught up in this, like this riptide of a veteran, of a woman, of a champion of all those who have suffered. I remember having her speak at a Red Badge event in Walla Walla, an annual public presentation of writers' works. And even though she was recalling events of 50 years earlier, you would feel as if you were there, transported by her, not just to see and sort of feel the experience that she had in Vietnam, but to actually be immersed in her emotional experience of it, which is both an amazing, almost magical feat, and also terrifying, because the stories she has to share are certainly not for the squeamish. But they're stories that we absolutely must hear. They're stories we absolutely must read. When we started working with Sarah, she had already published a book. Hard to get a book published. It's hard to do it. It's hard even for somebody to write the pages that make a book. But it's a fine debut. And I've read that, and I've read the new book, Warrior Nerves, PTSD and Healing, and on Nothing's Competitive. This book reaches so much more of Sarah's potential, because it's not simply a recounting, although you will get that. It's also something of a guide, a meditation on the problems faced by those suffering with PTS, and a way forward in terms of what to do about it. I would take the advice of those who've been there, and take the advice of those who know suffering, and take the advice of those who know recovery, and take the advice of those who know what it means to find yourself again and anew. And I think that's what Sarah has accomplished in the second book, the second publication. I only wish that I could be there to celebrate with you, with her, with everyone. Not only to suggest that this is an amazing accomplishment, it is, again, publication, fantastic, but more so that an individual has been able to harness all the upset, all the anguish, all the horror, and like an alchemist, turn it into gold for those lucky enough to meet her and read her work. So I'm sorry, Sarah, that I cannot be there. To me, it makes all the sense in the world that you are getting published again. I feel like there's going to be another book after that, and maybe you don't want to hear that now because you don't want to do the work. I get it. But I just want you to know that I have tremendous respect for you as a writer, and I have as much, if not more, respect for you as a human. I find myself learning from you every time we meet for a Red Band session. You give me faith that that fire inside never has to die, and that great commitment to a cause, that great compassion for others, is something that is to be cherished, a fire to be stoked, and one we can all keep warm sitting by. So thank you, Sarah. Congratulations. Again, sorry I couldn't be there. Round of applause for Sarah Blum. She deserves all of them. And buy the book.
Well, this being Seattle Opera, I suppose you all should have expected that there would be a lot of singing today. And there were a couple of pieces that Sarah specifically requested if we could perform. The first will be performed by a wonderful, well, let me back up a bit. In recent quarters, we've had the opportunity to bring on board a couple of wonderful local soloists to serve as vocal leads and teaching artists within the Veterans Choir. One is Zach Martin, baritone, and the other you'll hear from shortly, Clarice Alfonso. She's a soprano. Like I said, they're both incredible operatic soloists who work here in the region, and we're also very happy to call both of them members of the Seattle Opera Chorus. So Zach is here to present a song written by Irvin Drake called I Believe.
Somewhere in the darkest night, a candle glows.
to welcome to the stage Pam Binder to share a few remarks. And to give you an introduction to Pam Binder, she is an award-winning New York Times, USA Today, and Amazon best-selling author, known for weaving Celtic legends, history, and time-bending fantasy into her captivating novels. With 15 novels and 7 novellas to her name, Pam's storytelling is rich with myth, adventure, and romance. As the president of the Pacific Northwest Writers Association and the director of its annual conference, Pam is dedicated to supporting aspiring writers. She teaches 2 year-long courses, Write Your Story and After the First Draft, helping authors bring their visions to life. A recipient of RTE Book Review's Lifetime Achievement Award, she continues to inspire with her passion for storytelling and love of Irish and Scottish lore. Welcome to the stage, Pam.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I actually remember when we first met and over our love of books, and I am very honored and grateful that you invited me here. I'm especially happy to be here for your second launch, Warrior Nurse. I was there for the first one, so this is perfect. It is said that writing a memoir can be challenging, but can also be rewarding. Some common challenges include balancing truth and memory, dealing with self-doubt, and navigating difficult emotions. To write a good memoir, it requires discipline and commitment. In Sarah's words, you have to share memories from your heart and soul and experiences. You share the emotional pain and experience the vulnerability of putting it out into the world. That's the hardest part. Writing is a solitary activity. Writing a memoir of this depth and strength requires something else as well. And I thought about that when I was actually thinking about this talk. It requires a warrior like Sarah L. Bloom. I looked up the definition of warrior, and with every word, every description, it was as though the articles were describing Sarah. A warrior is a soldier, champion, and fighter. They show great courage, are fearless, and prepare for battle both on and off the field. They are mentally strong and sacrifice themselves for the good of others. They have discipline and are dedicated. They seek the truth. They serve and protect. They stand tall while facing the world with unconditional love and light. And I know we have very many veterans here, and can we all give everyone a round of applause? Other people have touched on Sarah's great accomplishments. And I'm going to kind of redo a few of these now, but I have to say, when I was looking at all the things that she's done, I couldn't believe it was just one person. So Sarah Bloom was an ARNP, received her bachelor's degree in nursing, summa cum laude, from Seattle University, and her master's in psychopsychology nursing, cum laude, from University of Washington. Sarah is a decorated nurse and Vietnam veteran who earned the Army Combination Battalion, serving as an operating room nurse at the 12th Evacuation Hospital at Chu Cong, Vietnam. I did not butcher that, sorry, did not have that correct. During the height of the fighting in 1967. Sarah was awarded the Certificate of Achievement for exemplary service as head nurse of the orthopedic ward at Madigan Hospital in 1968, where she was also the assistant director of nursing. Sarah is a practicing nurse working with PTSD and trauma resolution. She co-created Recognition Friendship Day in Seattle, Washington. Sarah helped bring together the American Vietnam veterans and Vietnamese veterans for the first time since the Vietnam War. She is one of the first 2 women elected to the National Board of Directors of the Vietnam Veterans of America in 1983. Orange and Birth Defects in the Children of Women Vietnam Veterans. Her article, Healing Journey for Women Military Veterans, appeared in the New York Times. In 1993, Sarah led a healing journey to Washington, D.C. for male and female veterans to help them heal their emotional wounds. For Veterans Day 1997, the South County Journal did a feature article on Sarah called Women Under Fire. Under her married name, she is featured in Myra McPhair's law book, Long Time Passing, Vietnam and the Haunted Generation. In Catherine Marshall's book, she is featured in The Combat Zone, an oral history of American women in Vietnam. Sarah is listed in Who's Who in American Women, Nursing and Medicine and Healthcare, and is a member of Vietnam Veterans of America, the National Association of Professional Women, which has over 160,000 members, the Pacific Northwest Writers, and many more. Sarah is also a member of We Are One, Women Veterans in Washington State, and 1.8 million in America. This is kind of fun. Not that all the others are not fun. Sarah obtained her black belt in Aikido at age 68, continues to train and also teaches Aikido. I actually was thinking about taking your class. She's an American drummer and loves to dance, drum, sing, and bring people together. Sarah has 2 grown children, a daughter who is a well-respected and effective MSW, and a son who's a professional musician, college teacher, author, and owner of the Tuned In Music Academy. Sarah has 2 granddaughters and a grandson. More pictures. Her first memoir, self-help book, Women Under Fire, sheds light on the experience of servicewomen and the culture of abuse, making it a critical read for anyone interested in justice and reform within the military. Her second book, Warrior Nurse, takes you into the operating room of the 12th Evacuation Hospital during the height of the fighting in the Iron Triangle, as mass casualties and severely wounded soldiers arrive on the table for warrior nurse Sarah Bloom. Experience with Sarah, her return home, emerging symptoms, effects of PTSD on the brain, body, and behavior, and the essentials for healing, hope, and guidance for anyone suffering from PTSD. Warrior Nurse has received 5-star reviews and has been named an important read. Please join me in a round of applause for Warrior Nurse Sarah L. Bloom.
Thank you very much, Pam. And now we have the opportunity to hear from yet another wonderful local soloist who has been a wonderful source of strength to the high voices section of the Veterans Choir for the last few quarters. We'll hear from Clarice Alfonso, and she will be performing a piece entitled Till the White Dove Flies Alone. And this was specifically chosen by Sarah because it was written, the writers are Rod McBrien and John Lind, and they wrote it to honor the 265,000 American women who served in the armed forces during the Vietnam War. It was written for the dedication, actually, of the Vietnam Women's Memorial in 1993. Thank you, Clarice.
Talk of times and the things that are calm, as if I really knew. You are brave beyond your years, with a heart of
platform in place here. Because now we get to hear from the woman of the hour, Sarah L. Blunt.
No? They want it up. Oh, project yourself. Thank you. Thank you, all my public works friends. Well, thank you all, actually. Thank all of you for being here. It means the world to me to have you here to support me. This is a big deal. It's like bearing my soul to the world, and it's just good to have friends surrounding me and supporting me. Some of you know about the accident that my son was in, and I just want to fill you in. He's doing okay. It's going to be a long recovery. He does have a broken neck, and he's going to wear a brace for, I don't know, a couple months at least. He had surgery earlier today, and they found glass inside his knee joint, so he's going to need more surgery there. But he's alive, and he's smiling, and he's going to heal. So thanks for all your prayers. I also want to tell you that there have been many, many challenges along the way as I'm closing in on today. And one of the challenges was, at first, I wasn't going to have any books at all for you. So I have books. They're over here, and you can buy them. And I'm going to sign them. And the publisher messed up. They didn't add, even though they had it, they didn't add the forwards. There were 2 forwards. One was written by Clara Adams Ender, who was the Brigadier General, head of the Army Nurse Corps. One was from Stu Patricia, who I served with in Vietnam. He was our chief of surgery. And I've actually talked to him a lot of times on the phone. He's writing a book that I'm looking forward to. And the title of his book is called, "What Are You Gonna Do? Send Me to Vietnam?" Because that's what we used to say when we were over there. What are you gonna do? We're in the worst place already. So that was left out. And also a lot of blurbs that were left out of people that read my book and wrote what they thought about it. So I have 3 copies up here on the table. So when you're going through the line, if you want, you can read those. In the meantime, I'm arguing back and forth with my publisher to replace all of your books. So you're going to get a book today, and I will sign it, and hopefully there'll also be a replacement book that has everything in it that belongs in there. Yeah, right. So I think that's the part about the books. So it's been a long journey. I started this book in 2016, finished it in 2021, and then there was years of editing back and forth, trying to get a publisher, and then after getting a publisher, waiting, probably it's been about 18 months waiting for this book to come out. That's the road you have to travel with publishing. But I'm grateful that it's complete now, and the book is out, and you can have one in your hot little hands to read. So I'm not going to share the worst. I am going to read sections from the book, and I'm not going to share the worst because I don't want anyone here to be triggered. But these are real experiences I've had, and the words are true and real. And so there might be something in there that would trigger someone. And And so if that happens, I do, in my book, I have EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's something that you can learn in the book, and it's how to take care of yourself if you're in a situation where you get triggered. But I don't think anybody's going to want to read that right now and go through the whole process. So what I ask you to do is just to put your hand over your heart, and if you need to, you can just tap with your hand, just tap your hand over that area, and that will help you if any of these words trigger you. And I hope it doesn't. But I do want you to take care of yourself. So I am going to read different sections so you get a little sense of what's in each part of the book. My work, am I doing that? Sounds like something withdrawn. Okay. My work at the 12th Evac Hospital and surgery was pretty intense and grueling. The helicopters brought in the casualties on olive drab, I'll say OD a lot, it's olive drab, canvas stretchers soaked in their blood. The casualties went directly to pre-op, a Quonset hut where they did triage. The pilot of the chopper would radio ahead to pre-op and say they were on their way, their estimated time of arrival, ETA, and how many and what type of casualties. When the casualties were offloaded, they were brought right into triage and sorted by injury. The worst casualties with the greatest chance of survival went first, and then degrees after that. Next worst, and the greatest chance of living. Those that were so bad, they were expected to die, were called expectant. They were, we think of expectant like expectant mothers, and that's bringing new life. But where I was, it was that they were expected to die. They were left in pre-op, and a nurse stayed with them until they died. At our hospital, our nurses and doctors didn't put many guys into that expectant category because we believed we could save most of them. When I say we, I include myself because it was an overall belief. Even though I was not assigned to pre-op, I am sure there were times we made choices that were not the best. When there was a difficult choice to make and many casualties, we had to sort according to the strict military guidelines, and that meant not to waste precious resources on a casualty who would probably die anyway, while others who could live had to wait and get worse. In pre-op, they tore off or cut off the soldiers' fatigues and boots, examined all their wounds, and decided in what order they came to us in the operating room. At age 26, I was not prepared to see what I saw or feel the depths of despair that I felt daily. 19-year-old young men who could have been my brother or boyfriend lost their legs, arms, eyes, had their guts shot to hell, their chests blown open, or their faces or heads mutilated. The worst was a face that was half gone, which I couldn't look at. What kind of nurse am I that I cannot look at such a horror without being violently ill? Oh, I meant to mention there's pictures in the book, and you'll see them when you get the book. This is a picture of me that's actually the one that's on the cover. The casualties came unceasingly. I never knew any of their names or what happened to them. One guy whose memory haunts me lost 2 legs, 1 arm, and 1 eye. It was so painful to see these wonderful, innocent guys all mangled and maimed and not even know why, or have the why make any sense. Day after day, chopper after chopper brought more and more of these young men doing a job they didn't want to do, kill. And who were they to kill? The enemy. VC soldiers. Kids, ages 13 to 19. It was a kids' war. We couldn't tell who was and who was not VC, which made it all the harder to deal with. After being there less than 1 month, we were hit by a mortar attack. Mortars came in from somewhere outside the base camp while I was in the shower. I heard sounds like a whistle and a thud and then an explosion. It sounded ominous, but I did not know the experience of mortars, and I wasn't sure what I was hearing until a young soldier in a flak jacket and helmet came into the hooch and said, "Everybody into the bunker!" He heard the shower and came by to tell me to go to the bunker. Our shower had no door, only 2 wooden partitions and the outside wall, so he could see all of my naked body. "I'm all soaked up. I'll go when I get rinsed and dried off," I said. And he yelled, "Ma'am, if you don't go to the bunker right now, I'm going to carry you there." His intensity told me he meant it. So I went slipping and sliding, soapy and wet, down the hooch in my flip-flops, and into the bunker in my short little robe, because I think it only came to about here. My robe barely covered me to my buttocks. I was terrified when I shut the water off and heard those whistling sounds, followed by great loud thuds and explosions. The bunker was dark. I went from the bright sunlight into the darkness. Fortunately, somebody grabbed my hand to guide me, knowing I was blinded momentarily. After a while, my eyes adjusted. Most everyone had on army fatigues and flak jackets. Some nurses had on robes and muumuus. Remember muumuus? A male voice beside me said, "Hello," and I almost jumped out of my skin because I thought there were only females in that bunker. I had only my skimpy robe on, like a long shirt, which barely covered my wet, soapy skin. I kept trying to cover up, and I felt embarrassed. I could see my chief nurse across from me on the bench, and she said, "When the all clear sounds, we will go back to what we were doing." No sooner had she said that, when a soldier popped his head into the bunker and said, "We need Lieutenant Blum in the OR right now." I looked over at her, and she nodded her head. So first, I went back to the shower to rinse off the soap and the mud I now had on my feet and legs, and then scrambled into my fatigues and boots and ran over to the OR. As I ran a zigzag course from my hooch to the OR to try to avoid being hit by incoming mortars, I heard soldiers yelling at me to put on my helmet and flak jacket. I didn't wear them because I weighed only 100 pounds, and with those on, I was more like 130, and I could not run as fast or as well. That was the day I knew that I could easily die in Vietnam, and when I first experienced mass casualties while being under attack. We had a steady stream of casualties all day and most evening. The choppers brought them in and went back for more. We had the dust-offs coming in regularly. Those are the helicopters with the red cross and the white background to designate them as non-combatants, flying wounded only. There were also the Little Bears, the Diamond Heads from the 25th Aviation Battalion that were stationed down the road on our base camp. The helicopters that brought in the casualties were usually Hueys. Dust-offs were designed for carrying casualties, and the others were support helicopters from local units, which usually transported soldiers to combat areas. They often brought in guys from the 25th Infantry Division who were wounded. Also, units of the 1st Infantry Division were also in our area, and some from the 101st Airborne Division. Most of the soldiers we saw had either lost body parts, had them blown up or blown off, or they'd been hit by machine gun fire, AK-47s, grenades, landmines, or stepped into or on a booby trap. Seeing the effects of all these on our guys was something I would never forget. My first in-country training at Cu Chi was to attend the Landmine Booby Trap Education Center, where we saw all the types of booby traps, landmines, weapons, and grenades that they knew about, and even learned about the tunnel openings. Imagine a young, healthy 19-year-old who has his whole life ahead of him. He's someone's brother, son, husband, father, friend, cousin, uncle, and beloved. He hears the call of his country to fight in Vietnam, or he's drafted and lands in a foreign country all alone until he finds the unit he's assigned to. He's there 2 weeks when he goes out on patrol, and 2 hours into it, he steps on a hidden landmine, losing his right leg, his left foot, and his pellet wounds all over the lower half of his body. The unit would radio for dust-off helicopter, and within 10 minutes, he was on the OR table, and we were clamping off bleeding ends of blood vessels, cleaning up the stumps surgically, and removing all the pellets of dead tissue caused by those pellets and their velocity. We washed out all his wounds thoroughly with saline before he left the OR. We washed wounds a lot in the OR and then on the wards after surgery. After the wounds are thoroughly washed, we would bandage them and send them to post-op. In post-op, the nurses would watch him, check his vital signs, give him antibiotics, pain medications, and every 4 hours, they would soak off all his bandages, wash his wounds with saline, and rebandage them. When we were done with him, we took off all the bloody sheets and put them in the dirty laundry basket, washed down the OR tables and trays with alcohol, and then we mopped the blood off the floor. Then we get the next casualty, the next, and the next. We were focused and didn't hear the choppers and the mortars fall. We just kept working. One day, during my first 2 months in Vietnam, my chief nurse, Major Molly Sestertia, called me in to tell me several nurses were invited to a general's party. She told me we would be taken there by helicopter and that we could wear civilian clothes. When I talked with the other nurses, they said, "It'll be fun, and we get to eat good food, as opposed to army food. And they have real plates, silverware and glasses instead of plastic trays, and the cups we use in the mess hall." I decided to go with them. We were picked up by a major and took what he called the champagne flight, because he had a styrofoam cooler in the helicopter filled with cups and champagnes, which we drank on the way. When we arrived at the 3rd Surgical Hospital at Benoit, there was a table set up with wonderful food, lots of salads, shrimp, jello, and breads. It was some of the best food I had in Vietnam all year. The reason for the party was a birthday celebration for the general of the 198th Light Infantry Brigade. I met him and some of the other generals too. They drank until they were drunk. The general that was leading the 1st Infantry Division was behaving in a way that was disgusting to me. He was sticking cigarettes in his nose and ears, had slurred speech, and was obnoxious when he grabbed me, put me on his lap, and in slurry words said, "You can be my girl, and I will send for you when I want you, and I'm in a secure area. I will always feed you well and take good care of you. I will send my helicopter for you, and all you have to do is come and be good to me." All I wanted to do when he said that was to throw up and get the heck out of there. I didn't think it was a good idea to tell him that. He grossed me out, so when I could, I politely got off his lap where he was holding me, and I headed for the bathroom to think. After all, that's where any self-respecting girl would go in trouble. I planned how to sneak out without him seeing me and get the pilot to take me back to the 12th. I left the bathroom, watching to be sure he couldn't see me go, and then I looked for the pilot. When I found the pilot, I told him I wanted to go back to the 12th Evac Hospital. He said, "No way, not until tomorrow." I told him, "I'm not staying here with these guys until tomorrow," and went to walk around. The audacity of the officers to assume we would stay the night with them. So here I was in a foreign country in the middle of a war at a strange hospital far from my home base. Since it was a hospital, I decided to walk around, see if I could find a nurse to help me. As I walked, I heard a male voice from between 2 buildings, became a little wary. He saw my body react and said, "It's okay, ma'am, I'm friendly." I answered, "How do I know that?" He came out into the light where I could see him and saw he was like so many other 19-year-olds I had seen at the 12th, and he was enlisted. That meant he was likely to treat me more respectfully. The officers had the attitude, as did the general, that I was government property. It would take much more than an act of Congress to make a gentleman out of many of those guys. The enlisted men were just glad to be able to talk and share. I told the young man my predicament, and he said that I could sleep on one of the wards that night and go back on the chopper in the morning. So that's what I did. What a night that was. I was tense and unsure all night, listening to the wounded soldiers moan and cry. I did not sleep much. I do remember doing a lot of praying that night, that I would be safe while I slept, and I was. Because I was an OR nurse, I had no idea what it was like on the ward until that night. The next day, I went back to the 12th, and I told my chief nurse, if that's an example of the parties I get invited to, I'd rather not go. I will stay here and work instead. That didn't mean I didn't do things for fun. I did. I went to the dances at the officers club, and I drank Mai Tais or rum and coke, and I danced for hours. Dancing was how I got out my feelings. It was like the dance of the Tarantella, intense, to get all the toxins out. Sometimes at the clubs, I would talk about the casualties that got to me emotionally. The guys that heard me couldn't take it, so they would add liquor to my drinks. The more I drank, the more I talked, and the more graphic I became. I was pretty vulnerable then, and I was lucky that I was with guys who treated me with respect. Being an officer, I was not supposed to fraternize with the enlisted, but they seemed to be the only ones that respected me and that I could talk to about life. I could talk for hours to a young guy from Florida who had red hair and freckles. I don't know what it was about the red-headed guys there, but they seemed to be the ones I was drawn to and who were open and sensitive. We talked about our experiences, our feelings, our ideas back home, and our lives before the war, and our dreams, etc. We had cookouts whenever we could for whatever occasion there was. The food came from the mess sergeants, and they set up big barbecue in barrels cut in half lengthwise. The doctors and the sergeants would do the cooking, and we'd wear our civilian clothes during cookouts. Those times allowed us to be with each other and laugh, play, socialize, and eat well. This could go on as long as no helicopters came in. We did this even when the choppers came in, but we stopped to watch, and sometimes when I was on call, which was often, I would leave to go to the OR. The cookouts were only about 50 yards from the helipad. So moving forward, my post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms began in April of 1975, when the communists took over Saigon. I was full of very sharp, relentless feelings about the war and what we, Vietnam veterans, had been through. But I had to shut those feelings down again until early 1980. While in graduate school at the University of Washington, Department of Psychosocial Nursing in 1975, Saigon fell to the communists. We Americans were in Vietnam to stop that from happening. So we had failed in our mission. On that day in April, when Saigon fell, memories came flooding into my psyche. Thoughts and images of places and people in Vietnam played behind my eyes like a real-time movie. I was devastated. My walls started to crack. The wall that I put up when I was on the beach in Vung Tau, which you'll read about when you see it. I was standing in class in front of a large conference table full of 5x7 blue cards flush with information when my emotions began coming up very intensely. And the message coming through me was, all our collective losses were in vain. I completely identified with my brother and sister veterans, alive and dead. A huge wave of intense emotional energy was rising up from deep inside. Despair, rage, passion, anxiety, and grief. I ran out of the class and began to walk around the outside of the Health Sciences building, crying, shaking, angry, despondent, and feeling very alone. I know now that I was dissociated again and reenacting my original angry Trump around the hospital on Tucci. Ultimately, I went back in to see my advisor teacher and tell her what I was experiencing. She and the department chairwoman told me the same thing. Get your shit together or get out. It felt like the army all over again. I decided I need to strengthen the brick wall around my heart. You might think that nursing instructors teaching other nurses to be psychotherapists in 1975 would know that a Vietnam veteran might have some problems dealing with the fall of Saigon to the North Vietnamese. I thought they would be sensitive to that, but they did not have a clue about my feelings. In 1980, I began to have nightmares and flashbacks. I was already somewhat numb without awareness of it. I believe that numbness was how I've been coping with my deepest feelings, my life, and my marriage. I was on my way to work in Tacoma as a therapist when I heard on the radio that the Iranian hostages were coming into the airport and they were playing the song, Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree, and there was a grand celebration for the hostages. I cried and cried nonstop in my car and wondered what they had done to merit such a homecoming when we as Vietnam vets had done so much and received only anger, hatred, name-calling, and rejection. It was during that time that the nightmares were occurring about once a week. One of the nightmares was of being in a hospital in Vietnam and hearing the continuous screams of the wounded soldiers. I was also having flashbacks. One flashback occurred while driving on the freeway to work at the Christian Counseling Service. There was an actual Army truck in front of me in the next lane. The flashback was that I saw an OD Army truck in Vietnam, full of wounded and dead soldiers. I saw their dirty faces clearly and their eyes pleading, help me, help me. I began to shake and I pulled over to the side of the road. Soon after that, I told one of my Seattle friends about my nightmares and flashbacks. She sent me a tiny article from the newspaper. It was about that big, about 2 inches wide, 3 inches high, which described the first women Vietnam veterans group in the country, starting at the Seattle Vet Center. The woman's name in the article was Jan Ott. I knew her from graduate school, but did not know she was a Vietnam vet. Her phone number was in the article and I called her. First, we talked about graduate school and being in the same program, yet not connecting with each other. I was in the family and child pathway. She was in the mother and child pathway at the University of Washington. Then we talked about her being a Vietnam veteran, and she shared her own experiences. Jan had gone all the way to Canada to find 2 psychiatrists who were trauma specialists and worked in a group format. She went into their group, got the help she needed, and then studied with them so she could bring it back here for us. I was grateful for what she had done and what she shared with me. And then I told her my recent problems with nightmares and flashbacks and asked her if she thought the group would help, and most importantly, if I went into the group, could I continue to function in my life? I told her about my work as a therapist, my children, my marriage, and she gave me this answer. I don't know how it'll be for you. Why don't you come to the first group and then decide if you want to go through the whole 16 weeks. That sounded reasonable to me, and I decided to go ahead and do that. This is the last part, and so this is in Washington, D.C. The next day was the big day. They called the event the National Salute to Vietnam Veterans, which included the parade, the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It was 1982. I did not know what to anticipate, except that I had to be separate from the nurses I had met there and the guys I was hanging out with, because we would be marching by state. Fortunately for me, Dave from Richland, Washington, the Vietnam veteran I met on the plane coming to DC, and Felix, the man who worked for the State Department, were both from Washington. I finally got to meet Felix in person. I was introduced to a guy named Joe, who was working with the Vets Group in Seattle. We stayed on the Capitol Mall grounds waiting for the parade to start. This was the very first ever parade for Vietnam veterans. 7 years after the end of the war, and for me, 14 years after my return home. I did not know how to respond. I was not sure what to expect. Yet I hoped deeply that it would be positive. They gave us a pin to wear that looked like those small replica of a service medal, and it said National Salute to Vietnam Veterans. I felt proud to wear it. I'd come on this trip with only slacks, blouses, and a raincoat. A veteran from the 25th Infantry Division gave me a hat with a patch on it. The yellow lightning bolt on the red background that represented tropic lightning, the call name for the 25th Infantry Division. This symbol is sometimes called the electric strawberry. I wore the hat with my pin on it, and I had my Caduceus pin on the lapel of my raincoat. I was not wearing anything else to identify me as a Vietnam veteran nurse except those items. That's how I marched in my very first ever parade of honor as a vet. The parade was in 1982, and I served in 1967. I was proud to march with the state of Washington, where I landed after Vietnam and never left. Because I was so short, only 5 feet, the guys put me in the front row, although there were not many rows because few of us actually came from Washington State. The parade was amazingly wonderful and healing. As we marched down Constitution Avenue, there were people lining the streets. Many had signs saying thank you, and they waved flags and shouted thank you and welcome home. Some men even saluted us with their hands. I cried so many times I lost count. I was truly touched to receive their heartfelt thanks and respect for us and what we had done. As I received their shouts, waves, and smiles, I began to feel less vulnerable and started to smile back. And I began to put my right thumb up in the air to acknowledge them, kind of an emotional, yes, right on. It was a very uplifting and truly healing experience for me. There'll be people over here that will take your charge cards if you want to buy the book. And I just want to tell you that it's in the book, but I want to tell you that I had to work really, really hard after I came back because I put that wall up, and it was held. It was really good, and so it kept me from having my feelings. So I worked in therapy for many years to get my feelings back, and so I'm grateful for all my feelings, and I'm never ever going to shut them down again.
Actually, we do have a few minutes built into the schedule for questions from the audience. If you're willing to respond to those, and you can stay here at your post if you'd like. I could take this out too if you want to walk around. And I will come to whoever has a question. Oh, wow. Carol, we can do this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
And I saw the first person in the back here who's a face. I recognize Ryan Milford
Ryan.
of Veterans Rights.
Hey Alex, it's good to see a lot of old friends here. Hi Dawn. What a great honor to meet you. My question, since I know there are others in the room who've been a deep inspiration in my life and a holder of stories of so many other veterans. I'm just grateful to be in the presence of a very important story for all of us in keeping the realities of war alive, the realities of what it was like to be a woman in service alive, and the history of Vietnam and how we are the beneficiaries of post 9/11 veterans of all that was not there when you came home and to come home in a good way. My question is, how has ceremony, since I know you are a drummer, and the arts played such a vital role in your healing?
Oh gosh, I couldn't have survived without it. I took a ukulele with me to Vietnam because I knew I would have to have music of some kind. And I did kind of get myself in trouble when I first landed because I had the ukulele in a case. It was a baritone ukulele. I put it down when I got to the executive officer of the 12th Evac Hospital, and I saluted, and I said, "Lieutenant Blum reporting for duty." And he looked me up and down, and he looked at that, and he said, "Well, what's in there?" And it was so tense, I had to do something to break it up, and I said, "Well, it's a machine gun. I thought I might need it over here." And he didn't think that was funny. It took, I think he rambled off for probably about 15, 20 minutes and told me how disrespectful I was to him as an officer and, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, but back to the question. Ryan, I don't think that I could have made it through these years without drumming, which I love to do, and it's really healing for me. Drumming and singing with the Vets Choir. I mean, singing with my brothers is like the ultimate, and I wouldn't have had that without you asking me. You're the one who got me into it. So I'm grateful to sing every time we get to sing together, and it's very healing for me. And what else do I do? It's mainly that. It's mainly singing and drumming and writing, and that's what's got me through it all. Acting, yes, my public works friends, yes, acting. Well, it was short-lived, but I loved every minute of it. Because Public Works loves their funding, so if you know people that will fund Public Works, then we can get back to acting on stage, because theater was absolutely fabulous for me. It was very, very important to me to get out there and to be able to lose me and get into a role and play it and be it, and I loved it. And I met so many wonderful friends, and I see you all out there. Thank you for coming and supporting me. Yes, let's get back to theater. Well, we're going to do something together on the 24th, right? Any other questions?
And I saw the next hand up right here in the second room.
Sarah, I'm a EFT practitioner, and I teach tapping at the VA hospital to help vets with PTSD. How has tapping helped you?
I don't know what to say about that. If I get triggered, I just automatically do it.
Okay.
And it just brings everything down. But I think the way it's impacted me the most is like I was so thrilled to learn it and to know I could do it, that I wanted to teach everybody that I could, especially every veteran that I knew. Anybody with PTSD, learn emotional freedom technique. It's in the book, it's in there for you to learn, and it's really easy. And I'm willing, if any of you have trouble with it, learning it and doing it, you can contact me and I'll do a Zoom with you and I'll guide you through it. We'll do it together. It's actually more powerful when somebody does it with you. And so that's why I offer that. And if anybody wants to do EFT for the first time and you're not sure about it, just let me know and I'll do a Zoom with you and we'll get through it. We'll make it happen. Thanks, Matisse.
It works.
It does work. And it works so well that the VA doesn't want to teach it. Because they're interested in drugging up all our vets.
Right. He's in the VA hospital in Los Angeles, and I'm working with him in the VA hospital in Hawaii.
Good. Yeah, EFT, emotional freedom technique. It's a very powerful technique. I call it a personal power tool, and I want to give it to everyone that needs it. Questions?
Sarah, I'm also a Vietnam War veteran. Actually, I've served, I've sent twice. Also a PTSD survivor. So I can relate to your whole story. I had a chance to get a sneak preview. I read the book. And I noticed that you made the statement, words to the effect that PTSD does not have to be a life sentence. You can be cured from it. But then you qualified that statement in your book too. Could you comment on that?
Yes. So I believe that anybody with PTSD, however serious it is, however intense it is, that you can get through the absolute worst of it, and you can be free, you can live your life freely the way that you wish. That doesn't mean you won't get triggered, you will. Some things still trigger me, and you never know what it's going to be that's going to trigger you. So have EFT ready, have it at the ready, and you can tap yourself down. And if you needed to have like 1 or 2 sessions to process whatever came up, then just do it. Just have a couple sessions, 1 or 2 sessions, and then down it goes, and you're back to your normal self. Because we don't want to allow the experiences that we had that led to our PTSD. We don't want to let those be what's primary in our lives. We want who we are today, all of the powerful essence of who we are, we want that to come through, not the PTSD.
And I think we have time for one more question, and I saw hands up in the front here.
Hi, Sarah. Is it in the book? Like when you got home, there was nothing for you. So you just had to like suck it up. I didn't meet you until, I don't know, the end of the 80s. And you had done a lot already. But I'm just wondering if you kind of talk about in the book how you found your way, you know, with this PTSD thing, and being able to talk about it with other vets and get the whole process going that helped you and also helped vets in general. So I'm just curious, because I've known you a totally different way, right? So it's just interesting to me. So glad I know you.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there.
I'll find out.
Yeah, in the beginning, there were no services at all for women veterans from Vietnam. And then they started having some for male vets. And then I read you that little section where Jay and I went to Canada and came here and brought what she learned. So that opened the door for us to have PTSD sessions for women vets.
Well, we'll still, of course, have time for a signing, but I just wanted to conclude today's program by saying, Sarah, that you are a treasure and an inspiration, and I think I speak for everybody here when I say that it is an honor to have you be a part of our lives. So thank you very much.